Quintus Smyrnaeus, also known as Kointos Smyrnaios, was a Greek epic poet whose Posthomerica, following after Homer, continues the narration of the Trojan War. The dates of Smyrnaeus's life are controversial, but they are traditionally placed in the latter part of the 4th century AD. His date is approximately settled by two passages in the poem, viz.vi. 531 SQQ, in which occurs an illustration drawn from the man and beast fights of the amphitheatre, which were suppressed by Theodosius I, and XIII. 335 SQQ, which contains a prophecy, the special particularity of which, it is maintained by Tixon and Coachley, limits its applicability to the middle of the 4th century AD. Some scholars suggest an earlier date in the 3rd or even the 2nd century, arguing that his Posthomerica shows an influence from the Second Sophistic, the school of Greek orators who flourished in the 1st and 2nd centuries. According to his own account, he began composing poetry in his early youth while tending sheep near Smyrna. His epic in 14 books, known as the Posthomerica, covers the period between the end of Homer's Iliad and the end of the Trojan War. Its primary importance is as the earliest surviving work to cover this period. The archaic works in the epic cycle, which he knew and drew upon, having been lost, his materials are borrowed from the cyclic poems from which Virgil also drew, in particular the Aethiopes and the Iliopsis of Varchnes of Miletus and the Ilias Micra of Lesches. His work is closely modelled on Homer, though Quintus is universally acknowledged to be inferior to Homer as a poet. The Editio Princeps by Aldus Manutius was published at Venice, 1504, under the title Quinti Collabori Derelictorum ab Homero Libri 14. Venetiis, in Oedibus Aldi. Aldus calls him Quintus Caliber, because the only known manuscript of his poem was discovered at Otranto in Calabria by Cardinal Bessarion, in 1450. His familiar name was first given him by his editor Lorenz Rodomin in 1577, who included a Latin translation by Michael Neander. There has been a renewed interest in the poet and his poem in the last several decades, with a new edition of the text with partial commentary and French translation done by Francis Vian Combalac's publication of an English translation, Alan James and Kevin Lee's detailed commentary on Book 5, and Alan James's well-regarded English translation, with newly edited text and commentary. The Posthomerica, the first 4 books, covering the same ground as the Aethiopes of Varchnes of Miletus, describe the doughty deeds and deaths of Penthesilea the Amazon, of Memnon, son of Eos the adorned goddess, slain by Achilles, and of Achilles himself, and the funeral games in his honor. Books 5 through 12, covering the same ground as the Little Iliad of Lesches, span the contest between Aias and Odysseus for the arms of Achilles, the death of Aias of suicide after his loss, the exploits of Neoptolemus, Eurypylus and Deiphobus, the deaths of Paris and Enon, and the building of the wooden horse. The remaining books, covering the same ground as Arctinus's The Sack of Troy, relate the capture of Troy by means of the wooden horse, the sacrifice of Polyxena at the grave of Achilles, the departure of the Greeks, and the dispersal by storm.